My boyfriend sent me a selfie from his female best friend's bed to prove I am insecure. Now he and his mother are begging for forgiveness after I left them with nothing. The screen of my phone lit up at 3 in the morning, illuminating my dark bedroom with a cold, blue glare that felt like a slap to the face. It was a photo from Wilfred, my boyfriend of 3 years, and for a split second, I thought it was a goodnight text I had missed. Instead, it was a selfie of him lounging back against a mountain of plush, pink decorative pillows. He was shirtless, smirking at the camera with a look of pure, condescending triumph. In the background, partially obscured by a messy pile of clothes on a vanity, I could see Ashley's reflection in her bedroom mirror. The caption underneath the photo read, "Some people trust, some people don't. Guess which one you are?" I sat up in bed, my heart hammering against my ribs so hard it felt like it might bruise. Just 6 hours earlier, we had been standing in my kitchen, screaming at each other because he insisted on driving 2 hours to Ashley's apartment to help her through a crisis and staying the night because he was too tired to drive back. When I told him it made me uncomfortable and that it felt like a boundary was being crossed, Wilfred had leaned over me, his face red with anger, and told me that I was the most selfish, suffocating woman he had ever met. Wilfred shouted, "Your insecurity is a disease, Alice. Ashley is like a sister to me, and the fact that you can't handle me sleeping on her guest bed, or even her actual bed if we're just hanging out, shows how little you value our relationship." He had stormed out, slamming the door so hard a picture frame fell off the wall and shattered. Now, here he was, texting me from her actual bed at 3 a.m., weaponizing his betrayal as a lesson in trust. I didn't reply. I didn't cry. I didn't even call him. I spent the rest of the night sitting on the floor of our shared office, going through my bank statements and the lease agreement. For 3 years, I had been the backbone of Wilfred's life. I paid 60% of the rent because I had the better corporate job. I had helped him rebuild his credit after he tanked it in his early 20s, and I had even been the one to bankroll his mother Aurora's medical bills when she had a health scare the previous winter. I realized in that moment that Wilfred didn't love me. He loved the lifestyle I provided, and he used trust as a leash to keep me from questioning why he spent so much time with Ashley. By 6 a.m., I had moved half of my things into my car. By 9 a.m., I had spoken to our landlord. Since the lease was in my name and I had paid the security deposit, I told him I was moving out immediately due to a domestic situation. I wasn't just leaving Wilfred, I was withdrawing every single resource I had ever given him. The fallout started around noon. Wilfred must have woken up to find the apartment half empty and his key no longer working on the deadbolt I had called a locksmith to change. My phone exploded. It wasn't just him, it was his mother, Aurora. Aurora had always been sweet to my face, but she was obsessed with her son and constantly enabled his behavior. The first text from Aurora was a guilt trip disguised as a prayer. Aurora wrote, "Alice, dear, Wilfred tells me you've kicked him out over a misunderstanding. Think of our family. Where is he supposed to go? You know he has no savings." I blocked her immediately. Then came the calls from Wilfred. He went from angry to desperate in the span of an hour. When I finally picked up one restricted call, his voice was shaky. Wilfred pleaded, "Alice, baby, the photo was a joke. I was just trying to show you that nothing was happening. Ashley and I were just watching movies. You can't just take the car and the apartment. I have a shift at work in 4 hours." I told him very calmly that since the car was in my name and the insurance was paid by me, he had exactly 1 hour to tell me where he parked it before I reported it stolen. I said, "You wanted a world where you could do whatever you want without consequences. Welcome to it." I spent the next month staying with my sister, working remote, and completely scrubbing Wilfred from my existence. But the drama didn't stay quiet. It turned out that without my income, Wilfred's life collapsed like a house of cards. He tried to move in with Ashley, thinking his soulmate best friend would take care of him. But Ashley, much like Wilfred, was a taker, not a giver. She didn't want a broke, unemployed roommate who expected her to cook and clean for him. Within 3 weeks, they were at each other's throats, and she kicked him out. He ended up on Aurora's couch in her tiny, one-bedroom retirement villa. Because I had stopped paying for Aurora's premium health insurance and extra home care services, she was suddenly struggling to make ends meet, and having her grown son eating her food and using her electricity was pushing her to the brink. The climax of this nightmare happened 2 months later. I was at a local coffee shop when Aurora literally cornered me. She looked 10 years older, her hair unkempt, clutching a cheap purse. She didn't hiss or yell this time. She grabbed my arm, her eyes welling with tears, and actually sank to her knees in front of the pastry case. Aurora sobbed, "Alice, please, I am begging you. Take him back. He's miserable, he's crying every night, he knows he messed up with Ashley. We have nothing left. My power was shut off yesterday. You were the only one who kept us together." People were staring, and for a second the old, people-pleasing Alice felt a pang of guilt. But then I remembered that selfie. I remembered the smirk on Wilfred's face while he laid in another woman's bed just to prove he could break me. I looked down at Aurora and said, "You didn't raise a man, Aurora. You raised a parasite. And I'm not a host anymore." I walked out of the shop, ignoring her wails. A year has passed since then. I eventually moved into a beautiful condo of my own, one that stays clean and quiet. I recently saw a post on a local community board about a troubled guy looking for manual labor jobs. It was Wilfred. He looked haggard, his confidence completely evaporated. I heard he tried to sue me for illegal eviction, but since he never signed the lease and I had records of every penny I spent on him, his lawyer, a cheap one he could barely afford, told him he didn't have a leg to stand on. As for me, I've started dating again, but the rules are different now. I don't look for someone who demands trust while acting untrustworthy. I look for someone who respects the peace I worked so hard to rebuild. Every now and then, I see a "some people trust" meme on the internet, and I just smile and scroll past. I'm one of those people who trusts now. I trust myself to never let a man like that into my life ever again. My life is full, my bank account is mine alone, and the only person in my bed is someone who actually belongs there. I lost a boyfriend, but I found my worth, and in the end, that was the best trade I ever made.